This is Lauren Salvern, a self-proclaimed journalist. But what she is about to do defies the professional ethics of what it means to be a journalist.
So this is a boat called the Aquarius that has been illegally bringing in migrants from the Libyan Ocean for the last while. And they're just heading out again to bring in more illegal migrants, and we are going to stop them. No way they're coming in here. No way they're bringing in more illegals. We are done. If the politicians won't stop the boats, we'll stop the boats.
Put out the red banner.
Put out the red banner.
Whoa! We need to chant. We need to chant.
No more illegal immigration. No more. 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 No more illegal immigration. Stop immigration. Stop. Stop. Stop immigration. Stop. Get in front, Thomas. Get in front. Stop that boat. 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 Thomas, go, go, go. In front, in front. Stop! Stop that boat! Stop! Stop! Stop that boat! No more!
Put the flag up. Patrick, put the flag up.
Gaan afroet met
Go here.
yeah.
No, it's too dangerous. We can't go in front. We can't go right in front.
They have to stop. They have to stop.
Stop! Stop!
It's stopping. They're slowing down.
in front of the boat.
In front of the boat. They have to stop legally.
They have to stop it.
Stop! What do they say?
Lorenzo, we need
Move out.
translation.
Needs to move out.
Okay, we gotta go. We'll be right back.
Any description she's given of herself as a journalist has now become vacuous, empty of any real meaning. Her metamorphosis from a promising proto-journalist at the very least into a full-blown activist is now complete. At this moment, it is clear she is no better than the people she tends to oppose. But believe it or not, this is not the first time her clear political bias comes out during her so-called reporting. This is a very common behavior you see from her over and over and over and over and over again in her reporting. Her criticism of the mainstream media is that it is clearly biased in many ways towards not just the political left, but the insane political left. The political left that lives in ivory towers. And to a large extent, I share her criticism. I think she is very much correct, but you see, two wrongs don't make a right, and unlike what she seems to think, I don't appreciate her trying to sort of balance things out by having her own clear right-wing bias presented into your fucking face.
If you know me, I've always been someone who is super against what we call identity politics. I call it out at every turn for the cancer that it is to our political discourse. Identity politics, of course, has been defined as a tendency for people of a particular religion, race, social background, etc. to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. In other words, instead of dividing us politically in terms of left, right, progressive, or libertarian, identity politics divides people's political goals and interests in terms of their social group status, like their race or their gender. To me, this sounds kind of more like social group politics or group membership politics, but whatever anyone wants to call it, modern day identity politics has become an intellectually corrupt political practice. Identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature. It's balkanized our world into groups that harbor resentment toward each other, whether it be Black Lives Matter movement subverting race relations or third wave feminism sabotaging gender relations. Identity politics, as we know it today, does not seek to move us forward as a society. It seeks to fragment, deconstruct, and cannibalize us.
No more illegal immigration! No more! No more illegal immigration! No more! No more!
Identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature. But this does bring me back to my points at the beginning of this video. As we move away from this destructive and divisive habit, should we abandon the concept of identity in political discourse altogether? We think in terms of groups, we act as groups, and at the end of the day, all politics is group politics. The only way for political movements to occur, let alone be effective, is to unite people by some sort of common trait. Otherwise, we'll never get anything done. So if you want to have any real impact in the political sphere, the question should not be a matter of rejecting identity politics, but rejecting the wrong kind of identity politics.
No more illegal immigration! No more! No more illegal immigration! No more! No more!
Identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature. So instead of focusing on that crazy, we should aim to preserve identities that have held societies together, promoted social cohesion, and managed to hand each individual a meaningful position in the larger social macrocosm. These identities being identities of culture. Identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature. And if only cultural transmission was as easy as sprinkling some European holy water onto non-Western foreigners, in fact, in our world of mass immigration with no assimilation, people tend to transmit their deeply ingrained identity to the new country they move to, rather than adopt the cultural identity of that country, fragmenting society even further into enclaves. And these things are worth talking about, and some of these identities really are worth preserving for the sake of the future of first world democracies. Because if you abandon the family traditions, the customs, and the values that have created complex societies, societies that create art, architecture, better standards of living, scientific achievement, and exploration, well, you abandon the nation and its love of freedom and democracy itself. And I can assure you that no magic dirt or pencil-pushing bureaucrats can reverse that damage. So, in conclusion, is identity politics inherently evil? Well, at its worst, it is a necessary evil. At its best, it's not evil at all, because political action on the basis of cultural identity may not only be the best means of moving forward as a society, but it may be the only means of achieving individual and societal prosperity. And if only cultural transmission was as easy as sprinkling some European holy water onto non-Western foreigners, identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature.
No, Lauren Southern is not a journalist. She has never been a journalist. But at the very least, in the beginning of her career, she could at least give appearance of being one. No, she is something else. A cancer instead. As if one illness in media wasn't enough. The clear regressive left, as well as the, in many ways, regressive right. Her modus operandi never really changes. She goes to an event, tries to interview some obviously not interested left-wing people who obviously will not want to talk to her because they are indeed regressives. But she doesn't even bother to try and find anyone on the left who is actually rational. Then she tries to present that the entire left is represented by these extreme individuals. Now, before I get a bunch of triggered fucking comments by my alt-right subscribers, let me point out that the exact same thing is done by the mainstream media all the fucking time, only reversed. This is not me trying to defend when left-wing journalists are being dishonest. I'm merely trying to expose when right-wing journalists are doing the same thing. And if you honestly conflate the two, then I feel sorry for you. Lawrence Salvern apparently doesn't know how to do basic fucking research. Take Sadiq Khan and his supposed quote, "Terrorism is part and parcel of living in a big city." We've heard it all before by all kinds of right-wing outlets, Steven Crowder, Rebel Media, and not to mention Lawrence Salvern. There's just one little problem with this. He never actually said it. Don't take my word for it, take Goodfella.
Hi, this is just a quick video. I want to make this, that there's been another terror attack. I can't believe I'm saying those words, but there's been another terror attack in London. London Bridge. I'm not going to cover that anyway. There's just something I want to get straight. I think consistency is very important, right? Now, I think I fell for this in the past, and it's just simply not true. Here's this photo here. This is from what, 2016, right? September. Sadiq Khan, London Mayor, says terror attacks are part and parcel of living in a major city. Now, what really bugs me about this is everybody and their grandmother are spreading this around, right? It's as if Sadiq Khan, by the way, I don't like Sadiq Khan, so the fact that I'm making this video is kind of annoying, but truth is important, right? But people are spreading this about as if he said, it's just like bad weather, you know, you have to learn to live with terror. You know, he never said that. What he said was, actually, I apologise for the poor audio, it's the only bit I could find, but this is what he actually said.
I'm not going to speculate as to how the police in York should react. What I do know is part and parcel of living in a great global city is you've got to be prepared for these things. You've got to be vigilant. You've got to support the police doing an incredibly hard job. You've got to support the security services.
You see, he didn't say that terror attacks were part of living in a big city. He said being prepared, the security services and the police being prepared for such attacks are part of living in a big global city. London is a big global city. That's absolutely accurate. I mean, even in a city like Tokyo, big city, that doesn't get a lot of terror attacks, but they'll still be prepared for it. It's important that you're prepared for it. So can we please stop spreading this as if he just said it, like brushed it off, like what, a terror attack? Oh come on, it's just like a bit of rain. You get used to it. He never ever said that. Please stop saying it. Thank you.
Now honestly folks, this is not me just trying to find every little thing to complain about when it comes to Lawrence Salvern, and I'm not really trying to single her out here by any means. This video may be titled after her, but trust me, this video is really more about the general problem of the new wave of so-called alternative journalism. You have no fucking clue just how annoying it is for someone like me knowing how to do basic fucking research and finding, time again, that the very same people who will call out left-wing hypocrisy in the media is doing the exact same thing. It's almost as if journalists pushing their agenda and being generally ignorant on issues and not knowing how to do basic fucking research is not a left and right dichotomy issue. It seems like regardless of where a journalist is on the political spectrum, they have the potential to be ignorant or dishonest. And that's the basic gist of this video. But Sandre, the entire mainstream media is slanted to the left. We need to have some outlets that are right. No, you don't. You need outlets that are actually fucking neutral. Sure, I can see the appeal of people wanting to have their own little safe space online just because every other person has their own fucking safe space. But I say fuck safe spaces. How about dealing with actual motherfucking facts? You know, there was actually a time when your mainstream reporter was at least honest most of the time. before this entire news thing became a huge business. The very same people who have a huge distrust to the mainstream media are turning to so-called alternative media that clearly has a bias, and when you mention this to them, they're like, "Nah, you're fake news, man." It isn't so much about the mainstream media being generally left-wing that I have that much of a problem with. And no, it's not because I'm a so-called lefty myself. The problem I have is that it has a bias at all. To indulge in Lauren Southern and her so-called journalism is not taking a bandage to a wound. It's to shove a bunch of fucking gravel into it, making it even more infected. She's not even doing this biased journalism thing in a very entertaining manner, to be honest. I mean, say what you want about Alex Jones and his fucking ridiculous nonsense. At the very least, the guy is fucking entertaining.
What do I do, Lord? Destroy the child. Corrupt them all. This is their plan, people. These are demons. Just like the Bible says, it's basically an intergalactic invasion into this space through people. I'm telling you, it's what all the ancients said, it's what they warned of, it's what we're dealing with. They're demons. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders, okay? I'll just say it, make fun of me all you want on CNN or wherever, but everyone already innately knows this. These people are not frickin' humans, okay? Hillary Clinton is a goddamn demon.
I would very much prefer Alex Jones to Lauren Southern. And just like Lauren Southern, he actually does appear to have boobs, so just saying. When you look back at old reporting, you see something that you don't see today at all. You see people actually doing their job in a professional manner. They ask their questions, they try not to ask leading questions. They want to get to the bottom of the issue. And when they're done, they're being respectful, they say their goodbye, they thank the person they interviewed, and then it's back to the studio, where the person behind the desk are simply presenting the news and are trying to push an agenda. You see, back then, you didn't have these huge headlines about "this might kill you," or 10 signs that you might have cancer, or "this is how Trump wants to eat your kid for lunch." Back then, people actually mentioned big stuff like, oh, I don't know, Watergate. There are very few stories in the history of journalism, in my opinion, that show the unselfishness of journalists in the past quite as much as the story about Watergate. These journalists did something that we should all be grateful for. They actually put their lives on the fucking line to give you the news. Back then, being a journalist was something to be proud of. You were gonna expose the truth. Back then, they didn't try to shove their own version of the truth down your throats.
And President Nixon says he's given Elliot Richardson the job of recommending changes in the law so that, to use the president's words, future campaign abuses of the sort recently uncovered may be prevented. Ehrlichman, in an interview with NBC News, said tonight that there has been too much innuendo and rumor flying around about Watergate. He said also that he and Haldeman have become symbols in the scandal. Ehrlichman said again he is innocent of any wrongdoing. Tonight, at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, President Nixon goes on television and radio to talk to the country about Watergate. The president's drastic shakeup at the White House pleased almost every member of Congress for various reasons. Many senior Republicans have been urging the president to clean house, and he has now acknowledged that pressure. Another reason is that of all the 2.5 million people in the executive branch, by far the most unpopular were H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman, unpopular with Republicans and Democrats alike. Paul Duke was on the Hill when those resignations were announced.
One Republican senator said the news was enough to cause dancing in the halls of Congress. The remark illustrated the deep dislike of Haldeman and Ehrlichman, long regarded as arrogant and contemptuous toward members of Congress. Because the two aides demanded unswerving loyalty to the president, Republicans found it difficult getting to Mr. Nixon if they deviated even slightly from White House policy. The result was bad feeling and bad relations for Mr. Nixon. Thus, there were no tears for Messrs. Haldeman and Ehrlichman.
Now I want you to compare what you've just seen with this.
Please share this episode with your friends. Please DVR this show so you don't miss any of it. If you just joined us, we were talking about a group in the United States. We had a group here whose goal it was to eliminate 10% of the U.S. population. Why? Because that's what anarchist, Marxist, communist, revolutionaries, Maoists do.
A fist bump, a pound, a terrorist fist jab? The gesture everyone seems to interpret differently. We'll show you some interesting body communication and find out what it really said. First, the President of America chest bumps an Air Force grad. Next, Michelle and Barack Obama fist bump or fist pound. People call it all sorts of things. But what happened to the old pat on the back? A handshake, a hug, today's body language, and what we can glean from it.
Attorney General, State of Ohio attorney for some 35 years, you are judicially challenged, and you're one of the stooges of the left that will always be there to excuse away criminal behavior. You suffer from Bob Beckelitis, which is an incurable, fatal condition of liberalism that has caused people like Eric Holder to be the constant Larry for President Barack Hussein Obama. Sign the petition, Tamara, to call for the resignation of the chief law enforcement officer of this nation because he lied under oath when he criminalized journalism, and you know he did it, but you refuse to do what's right.
Of Hollywood pushing its anti-business message to our kids. First, it was the Muppets movie. Remember, they used an oil baron as the enemy. A year later, it was the Lorax casting environmentalists against anyone who dared to create a new business. And, well, now it's the Lego movie with the villain named President Business. Take a listen to him.
Would you cancel my 2 o'clock? This next meeting could run a little bit deadly.
Looks a little bit like Mitt Romney.
Well, we all know that SpongeBob is popular with the kids, and for the life of me, I still keep trying to figure out why it is.
I'm with you. I don't get it.
It's a
sponge in the ocean.
My kids watch limited TV, but every time they choose that show, I'm like, why? But anyway, it's hard to even follow sometimes. Anyway, now maybe that'll be a good thing, because SpongeBob is talking a lot about global warming, and he's only looking at it from one point of view.
SpongeBob, you're wasting me precious carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide?
I'm pumping it into the atmosphere, boy. Thanks to global warming, the temperature will soon go through the roof, and then we'll have an endless summer.
Why do you want an endless summer, Mr. Krabs?
So I can open my latest money-making venture, the Crust Bowl. Who turned up the heat? SpongeBob, what are you doing?
Just throwing another tire on the fire for global warming, Mr. Krabs.
Okay, so what happened July 20th, the Department of Education invited a bunch of DC kids in, and they had this festivity, and they handed out these particular Nickelodeon books where clearly Nickelodeon is pushing a global warming agenda. And while there is no disputing the fact that the Earth is getting a little warmer, the big question is it man-made, or is it just one of those gigantic climactic, phases that we're going? For a while we're cold, and then we get warmer, and then we get colder. And
they just give the attitude that they didn't like people. My impression of Halderman, very shortly after he was in there, and Ehrlichman, I think particularly of Mr. Ehrlichman, very soon.
Yes, it might be boring, and it might not keep your attention quite as long, but for the moment that you are being attentive, you are actually being taught something. You are being enlightened. This is what journalism is all about. Journalism shouldn't even consider itself with things like being entertaining. Just give me the fucking news. Now, there's a very common argument that I hear from very cynical people when it comes to journalism, saying things like, oh, well, the reason that journalism is in the shape it is today is because people want to be wowed, they want to be worried, people seek attention, people seek excitement from their news. That's the only way to capture them. And to some degree I would agree, and to some degree I think they have a point. We do know that clickbait journalism in a way actually kind of works, even though it is becoming less and less efficient over time. But the fact that people are shying away from it, the fact that people do click a lot less on these headlines, the fact that people simply are getting fed up with it, shows that it's not really something that's sustainable. The fact that people are actually hungry for professional journalism, the fact that there is actually a new market opening up for a new generation of journalists, is a clear sign of the masses saying no more. We don't want to be spoon-fed nonsense anymore. We just want the goddamn news. Now, this discontent, in my opinion, has been misused by outlets such as Rebel Media and the Young Turks. But even they are starting to notice a decline in attention. And make no mistake, this is going to happen to Lauren Southern too.
How has the web changed what you do as a professional journalist?
It means for me that people come up to me and they don't say, I've read your article, or I've read your book, or I was at your lecture, or I came to your book signing, or your book reading, or you were great on C-SPAN. They say, hey, do you know you're on YouTube? And I caught your act on, and this is maybe a TV show or a speech or some exchange in public that I'd forgotten I'd done. And it's immortalized. It makes me very nervous, and it makes my publisher very happy, because it means you don't have to be asked on TV, you don't have to be asked for a lecture, you're just there, accessible.
What do you think are the positive changes that we've seen with this new media?
Well, can't I mention the negative ones?
You can mention the negative ones.
It's like all the dreams I ever had that everything I did I was doing with no clothes on, and I was naked and visible to everybody at all times. That's come true. It could be worse. I can usually keep my clothes on as well. What is the positive? The positive is what I just mentioned. If you're willing to run the risk of having no unpublished thoughts, and if you can speak in a few sentences and try and keep it short, like I'm trying to do now, with just a few elegant phrases, trying to be memorable, or at least intelligible, then people may come to find out what you have to say. For free.
42,000 pairs, 6X, for the illegal aliens from south of Mexico that bus up on a train every day. To understand, folks, you could wear this, I could wear this as a onesie, okay? I could wear this as a leotard. I mean, oh my God. Oh my God, we're being invaded by South American walruses. The government is shipping in 42,000 people. That's bigger than Jabba the Hutt. This country is so screwed up, man. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's reaching a proportion. If you're a radio listener, you can't see them. Oh my God, look at this. Oh God, I don't think I've ever laughed this hard on air. Oh my God, I mean, it's so ridiculous.